Normally, I don't buy into superstitions. I've heard plenty of backwoods stories, and usually I just laugh them off. But tonight, something changed. I'm a grown man, and after reading a few of these encounters, I broke down sobbing. I even threw up my dinner, because suddenly, memories I'd buried for decades came flooding back. When I was a kid, I was fearless. I'd spend all day roaming the hills, hunting bugs, sneaking into the woods. I drove my parents crazy because I'd vanish for hours, sometimes until after dark. Eventually, I started sneaking out at night. At 12 years old, I'd leave around midnight, explore golf courses, creeks, and forests, and slip back home before dawn. It was dangerous, sure, but I never felt afraid. Not even when I crossed paths with deer, cougars, or even the cops. Out there in the dark, I felt unstoppable. Until one night. It was early summer. Clear sky, bright moon, cool air, the perfect night for exploring. I jogged past the neighborhood, through the golf course and into the woods, following a dry creek bed I hadn't explored before. That's when I noticed it. The silence. Usually the woods at night were alive with insects and frogs. But this spot was dead silent. Not a cricket, not a bird, nothing. Just the faint breeze in the pines. Then the fear hit me. A dread so heavy it made the hairs on my arms stand straight up. And then, it screamed. The most horrifying sound I've ever heard in my life. Not a cougar, not any animal I've ever known. It was a long, guttural wail, full of hate. My body locked up. I couldn't move. I swear, it felt like death itself had found me. And then I saw it. Something was moving in the shadows. Too big for a deer, too wrong to be a bear. It lurched forward on four limbs, but its shape was human-sized. It was coming straight at me, silent, unnatural. Finally, I broke free and ran harder than I ever had in my life. I don't remember much, just the pounding of my feet, the taste of dirt when I fell, the hot shame when I realized I'd pissed myself. The next thing I remember, it was dawn. Somehow, I made it home. My dog, who had always loved me, snarled and snapped at me when I climbed the fence. That shook me almost as much as what I'd seen. I slipped inside before my dad noticed, but at school that day they sent me home with a fever. I never went exploring at night again, and I was never the same. My dogs never treated me the same either. Overnight, I went from a loud, outgoing kid to a recluse. It was like something had been taken from me in those woods. For years, I locked that memory away, until tonight. Reading those encounters opened the door, and everything came flooding back. I still don't know what I saw, but I know something happened, and it's haunted me my entire life. When I was 4, my family moved to rural Pennsylvania. We had acres of woods behind our house, fields for miles, and not a neighbor in sight. To a kid, it felt like paradise, huge, open, and full of mystery. But from the start, I could feel something strange about that house and the land. I've always been sensitive to spiritual energy, and this place had a vibe. My constant companion back then was our small sheepdog, Bambi. He was my adventure buddy, protective, loyal, and I swear, tuned in to the same creepy things I felt. If something was in the house or woods, he'd bark, whine, or track it with his eyes. It was like we shared the same sixth sense. Most afternoons after school, I'd grab a snack, head straight outside, and wander the woods with Bambi, sometimes for hours. My parents trusted me to roam as long as he was with me. The woods were our playground, but they also had their dark corners. One fall afternoon, the air was crisp, leaves crunching underfoot. I was whittling a stick while Bambi roamed off leash nearby, always within 20 feet, always circling back. But suddenly, I realized I was alone. No Bambi. No sound but the wind. Then, crashing deeper in the woods. Bambi's alarm bark rang out, followed by animal screeches like raccoons or something fighting for its life. My heart pounded. I called for him. Moments later, he burst out of the brush, covered in burrs and panting hard. I didn't even think. We ran, full speed, straight back to the house. As we reached the back door, I stopped to catch my breath, and that's when I saw it. On the far edge of the runway next door, A strip of field where my neighbor flew his planes stood someone, or something, completely black, shadow-like, featureless even in the fading light. They were hunched over, then slowly straightened, facing the woods. Then, in my voice, high-pitched, the same tone I used to call Bambi, they called out, "Bambi!" The hair on my arms stood up. Beside me, Bambi tucked his tail, lowered his head, and growled. The thing called again, but this time its voice cracked, like it had been calling for a while. My 8-year-old brain thought someone was trying to steal my dog, but why would they stand out there in the open calling like that? That night, my parents brushed it off. But the next day at my cousin's, my uncle told me he'd seen a strange animal near the creek by the runway, a gaunt, emaciated shape sprinting across the bridge. Since then, every visitor to our place says the same thing. The creek and the plane shed feel wrong. Over the years, I've seen ripped-up goats in the fields, heard things I can't explain, felt eyes on me in those woods. I've held on to this story for years because even now, it chills me. I don't know what was calling for my dog that night, but it wasn't me. It was the 4th of July. Normally, my friends and I just sat behind our computers all day, but this time, Neil suggested something different. His grandparents' farmhouse, 40 miles out in the countryside. Perfect for fireworks. There were 5 of us, me, Neil, Elijah, JD, and Neil's sister Katie. The drive was cramped in a 2-door, but we made it. Halfway there, we picked up fireworks. When we finally arrived, Neil casually mentioned his grandparents were out of town. That meant we had the whole place to ourselves. Katie offered to grab food and drinks, leaving the fireworks locked in the car. The rest of us headed to the backyard pool. The farmhouse sat uncomfortably close to a forest. Neil warned me about wolves, even handed me a pocket knife, saying there was a shotgun inside if things got bad. As Elijah and I talked by the pool, I noticed movement at the tree line. A figure, Katie, or so I thought. Elijah laughed, saying she was just trying to scare us. But then JD came running out of the house, pale as a ghost. "Katie's still on the road," he said. We froze. The figure in the field started waving, or at least jerking its arm like a broken puppet. That's when it screamed. Not human, deafening. We bolted inside, locked the doors, and armed ourselves with Neil's shotgun. When Neil peeked through the blinds, the thing was standing at the pool gate. It looked like Katie, but wrong. Hair a mess, clothes torn, skin bruised, head tilted unnaturally, jaw hanging open. It jerked violently, its whole body shaking like it was about to snap in half. We hid, silence thick in the air. Then came the stench. Rotting meat mixed with spoiled groceries. JD gagged and threw up. Just as suddenly, the smell vanished, replaced by a sound. A whine, like an animal learning to speak. From the front door, it repeated itself over and over until the voice grew clearer. It sounded exactly like JD. His tone, his speech pattern, his voice. "Get out! Leave us alone! Get the hell out of here!" The thing pounded on the door, not to break in, but like an impatient knock. The scream returned, rattling our bones. Neil snapped. Fueled by anger, he flung open the door and fired the shotgun. The blast shook the house, but when the smoke cleared, there was nothing. Just the empty driveway. We didn't argue. We didn't wait. When Katie finally pulled up with the food, we piled into the car without a word. She kept asking what happened, but none of us spoke. The only sound I heard on that drive home was the echo of that inhuman scream. "Get out!"